Hey everyone, guess what? Miss Hinkson again. So, welcome to another session of Science and Technology with Miss Hinkson. What are we learning about today? Well, we are continuing our discussion on energy transformations. You should have watched the part one video, which introduced energy. And now we're going to look at how, or the idea that we might sometimes need to convert one form of energy to another, because we have one form of energy available, but we need another type of energy, or so on. So let me just stop my video so you don't have to see my face through this entire thing. Okay, so what did you see in the last set of videos? So before, in the other video, we talked about just different definitions of energy. When we're talking about students and we say, oh my gosh, he has so much energy. Or as us older people say, oh, I wish I had the energy that they have. So we just don't have that ability to move around and just be as energetic as you guys are. But in technology, the definition of energy is a little bit different, not too different, but things in tech and things in real life have a little bit difference in their meanings. So the definition of technology in terms, of energy in terms of technology is in technology, energy is defined as a system's capacity to do work. For instance, a system's capacity to make objects move. So, this word work is another word that we use in our everyday language and our everyday life, but it has a slightly different meaning in science. In this picture over here, we see people trying to move boxes. So they need energy to move the boxes. So work now is the result obtained when a force is exerted on an object and it is moved a certain distance. So the two things required for work to be done or for something to be considered work is one, you have to have a force, and two, the object must be moved. So in this first picture over here, we see someone totally pushing a brick wall, like with so much force to the point where they're sweating. But in terms of the scientific definition of work, no work is being done because the brick wall is not being moved. So no distance is covered by the object that is having a force applied to it. So in the other presentation, we did have this slide, and you also had descriptions of every form of energy here. So your textbook talks about 10. If you want to read up about them, they are on the pages 396 to 397 in your Eureka textbook. In this lesson, we'll be talking about potential energy and kinetic energy, and we'll see that these two um, kind of go hand in hand. They have this kind of relationship. We will talk a little bit about radiant energy and elastic energy, but there's a lot of different forms of energy out there. So, we were talking about the idea that sometimes you have one form of energy and it's transformed into another form of energy. So, one thing you should have remembered from the first lesson is this idea that energy is neither created nor destroyed. Energy is just cycling through the universe, cycling through the earth, and transforming from one form to the other, to another, but it's not being created nor is it being destroyed. That is called the law of conservation of energy. And that is a concept that you will continuously see throughout your studies in science. And I don't just mean this year, I mean it will follow you until you stop studying science. So, again, it is impossible to create or destroy energy. Energy can only be transformed, in other words, change from one form to another. So, there are different ways of making energy change from one form to another. Energy can sometimes be transformed directly. Often, however, the desired form of energy cannot be obtained directly intermediate forms must be used. So we talked about this in the sense that what words do you see here that you've already heard in the technology section and that we've already talked about? I'll give you about a second to think about that. So, what words have we already kind of talked about? Maybe not in this context, but we've spoken about those words. So, direct and this here, intermediate. So remember when we were talking about linking, we were talking about two pieces of a technical object being linked together without an intermediary piece, right? So when that happens, it was a direct link. But then we said if we needed like a middleman or an intermediate, that was an indirect link. So you can think about that and apply this sort of reasoning to this idea here. Sometimes you can transform one form of energy to another directly, but sometimes you need an intermediate. So you need there's an indirect transfer, there's an indirect link between the transformations, the energy. So over here we see that we have chemical energy, right? So what do we have here? We have this technical object, right? We have a flashlight. What is the purpose of the flashlight? It was created to solve a problem or meet a need. The flashlight is supposed to give you light, right? When you have low light or no light at all. So how do we get that flashlight to work? What kind of energy is involved? Well, you do need the light, but before you can even get this to light up, there's other processes involved, there's other energy involved. So you need a battery. Okay, so you need this battery which has chemicals in it, right? There's acid in there. And when you put the battery in there, that creates a circuit. And then you have the flow of electrons, which is electrical energy, and then they will flow and they will eventually go to the light bulb, and then the light bulb will light up and we will have radiant or light energy. But you can't go from chemical energy directly to radiant or light energy. You need the electrical energy, so we need that electric circuit in the flashlight in order for this to work. So this is an example of indirect transformation. And in your textbook, there are pages of direct transformations. So I encourage you to go to pages 398, okay, and all the way to 400. And they talk about all these direct transformations. Okay, so you should always have your textbook around. So I'll give you time to go to the pages. So over here, this is straight out of your textbook. So we have initial, so again, this is showing you direct transformations of energy. So that means you don't need an intermediate energy. There is not one converting to a middleman and then that middleman converting to the one that you need. So you have an initial form of energy, the form of energy obtained, so that's the final one. And then these are just giving you examples of that. So over here, we have electromagnetic energy. That's the initial one that you have. And then what do you have obtained? Electrical. Description: the electromagnetic energy of the sun is captured by solar panels and transformed into electrical current. So you remember this word electromagnetic. Last year you talked about that when you talked about the sun, and which is a source of light, and we talked about visible light, and visible light, it can be found on the electromagnetic spectrum. So you would have heard that word before. So I will not go through all of these. You are responsible to read these pages on your own. Okay. All right, so this was also in your textbook. Please excuse the fact that it's cut off, but we were talking about this in an earlier part of our studies. And we were talking about that. Let me just go to the page. This was on page 391. We were talking about this in terms of components of a system. So I told you that we would kind of revisit this idea in the beginning, later on. And this is where we are revisiting the idea. So we had over here this apple peeler, I should say, sorry. And its purpose, right, is to peel apples. But this is a manual apple peeler. So how does it work? Well, you need an energy source. So you hear how I use that word? How does this work? Well, we talked about work. But what do you need for work? Well, you know what? You need energy. Right here, this has to turn. But where are we getting that energy to turn? Well, that energy source, it's going to be our muscle force because I am going to have to manually turn that apple peeler for it to work. And then when I turn it, then the rest of this is going to start turning, and that's when it's going to serve its purpose. But all of these things are initiated by inputting some sort of energy. So you need an energy source. Now, over here, we looked at the dishwasher, and the dishwasher's purpose is to wash dishes, but it doesn't wash dishes on its own. I push a button, and then the button will allow electricity to flow, and then the dishwasher will work. So that here, the energy source is electrical. Okay, but I use my muscle power at first a little bit to push the button, and then the electricity started to flow, and then the dishwasher worked. So, this idea of inputting energy and processing it and then outputting, this is something we saw before, and it is being revisited in this section. Okay, so you need an energy source. You need some sort of energy to actually make these technological objects work. So these are just little examples of energy conversion. So we are going to talk about this idea of chemical being transformed into mechanical, right? Because we need energy, but where are we getting our energy from to even do anything? Well, it's from the foods we eat. Okay, so that's where the energy is coming from. Now, this would not be the technological world section if we did not talk about the bike. I'm sorry, guys, that we always talk about the bike, but it is the best technological object to explain all of these ideas around technology because there's so much going on there. There are so many different parts, there are so many things working together. So I'm sorry, but the bike is the ideal example. So, what type of energy transformations are involved in riding a bike? So, just think about it. The bike doesn't function on its own, right? Like, it doesn't start riding on its own like a regular bike. It needs some sort of energy input. It needs you, right? So, we can look at it from this aspect because, again, there's a lot going on. So, think about this process. So, we have the sun. What kind of energy do we have coming from the sun? So, reactions occur within the sun to transform nuclear energy into electromagnetic energy. Okay, so the electromagnetic energy is the sun, the visible rays that we get, the light that we get from the sun. And then plants transform electromagnetic energy, which they got from the sun, into chemical energy. So here we have a corn stalk or a corn plant, whatever that is. And then we have this young man is eating the corn. So why is he eating the corn? Why do we eat? We eat to get energy. So your body transforms chemical energy into thermal energy to maintain your body temperature, right? Because your body can't be cold, your body can't be too hot. There are processes in your body that maintain an ideal temperature under normal conditions, provided that you're not sick. But your body also transforms chemical energy into mechanical energy when you ride your bike. So we will look at the rest of this process. So we looked at this whole idea of because you need to input the energy, right? The muscles, your muscles need to input the energy to ride this bike. But what happens once you start riding the bike? So there is also energy conversions in the whole process of riding the bike. Okay. So chemical energy in your body is converted into kinetic energy when your muscle fibers contract and relax. Two, your legs transfer the kinetic energy to the pedals by pushing them around in a circle. Three, the pedals transfer this kinetic energy. So remember what kinetic energy is. When we talk about kinetic energy, you should immediately think about movement. Okay. So that's the energy involved in a moving object. The pedals transfer this kinetic energy to the gear wheel, which transfers kinetic energy to the chain. Four, the chain moves and transfers energy to the back wheel, which gets you moving. So there were two forms of energy that I told you that you should never forget, and that they are partners in crime. They go hand in hand, they're buddies. Do you remember which ones those were? Yes, potential energy and kinetic energy. So, potential energy, this is the energy an object possesses because of its position above a surface. This is a form of mechanical energy. Okay, so we see here we have this ball, and we can tell that they're holding up the ball. It has potential energy. It has the it has the capacity to do work, but nothing is happening yet because it is being held, it's being suspended above a surface. So when you think about potential energy, you should think about position and above a surface. Okay, and we're going to talk about mechanical energy because these potential energy and kinetic energy are related to each other through this idea here, and we'll look at that. And then kinetic energy is the energy of objects in motion. So when you hear kinetic, you should immediately think about motion. You should think about movement, not sitting still, not at rest. Okay, so kinetic, movement, motion. Okay. And what did I tell you that you should think about when you think about potential energy? So, when something has the potential to do something, it's not doing it yet, but it can, right? So, potential energy, you should think about position above a surface, right? All right, so these two forms of energy go hand in hand. Kinetic energy and potential energy are good friends. So here we see the relationship between potential energy and kinetic energy. So when you are moving, there is kinetic energy, but let's look at this man here. So before I go on to the next slide, let's talk about something. Mechanical energy is the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy. Again, mechanical energy is the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy. So if I say the mechanical energy is 200 joules, so one of the units for energy is joules, right? Just like how you have units for distance, such as meters, the units for energy is joules, and that's just a J. So if I say the mechanical energy of this system is 200 joules, that means the kinetic energy plus the potential energy equals 200 joules. Now, when I'm at the bottom and there am not in any position above the surface, so this is the surface, all of my energy is in the form of kinetic energy. As soon as I start moving up the hill, right, and my position is above the surface, so above this reference point, my kinetic energy starts being converted into potential energy. So when I'm at this point, I have some kinetic energy, but I also have some potential energy. So, in regards to my first explanation, when I said mechanical energy is the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy, so let's say the mechanical energy is 200 joules. At the bottom, when there is no potential energy and it's all kinetic energy, then it would be 200 joules. As I go up the hill, I'm getting more kinetic energy and less potential, less potential kinetic energy and more potential energy. So down here, this was 200 joules of kinetic energy only because I was not above the surface. But when I get to the top and I stop momentarily, all I have is potential energy. So now I have 200 joules of potential energy and zero kinetic energy. Why do I have no kinetic energy? What did I say before? I stopped. So there was no movement. Now, what happens when I go downhill? What's happening to the potential energy and the kinetic energy? Well, the amount of potential energy starts decreasing and the kinetic energy starts increasing. So now down here, again, I'm back to all kinetic energy, 200 joules, and no potential energy. Okay, and eventually, if I do not continue to pedal, I will stop because of friction, right? So the surfaces are seldom smooth. You know what friction is. Friction is a force that opposes the force that's going in the direction of the movement. So friction will eventually make me stop, and then that energy that I had will probably be converted to thermal energy. So this is just another example of potential energy versus kinetic energy. When she is holding this ball above the ground, she's just holding it. She hasn't dropped it. This is all potential energy. As soon as she drops the ball and it starts decreasing in its height, then the potential energy starts reducing and the kinetic energy starts increasing. So we see that over here. So this is just what I've been talking about. Mechanical energy, it's the total potential energy and kinetic energy of an object. Okay, so over here, mechanical energy is equal to potential energy plus kinetic energy. So mechanical energy is a form of energy. It is all the energy that an object has because of its motion and its position. All living things and all machines use mechanical energy to work. In other words, mechanical energy is the sum of the kinetic energy, which is energy of motion, and the potential energy, energy stored in a system, by reason of the position of its parts. So we're just going to watch a quick video. I know it's kiddie, but it's funny. It helps you understand um, the ideas of kinetic and potential energy. So just be a little kid for a minute. So that was an interesting video. I know it was like maybe for like it looks like it was for kindergartners, but honestly, those concepts are too advanced for kids that young. It's just a fun way to look at something that's pretty complex. I'm sure you understand it a little bit better. Now we're going to look at potential and kinetic energy, but we're going to look at it from the standpoint of being somewhere else other than Earth. We're going to look at it um, from space, more or less.
Welcome to the International Space Station. I'm astronaut Joe Acaba. Today, we're going to talk about potential and kinetic energy. Let's get started. Kinetic energy is the energy an object has because of its motion. An object can store energy based on its position. This is called potential energy. On Earth, imagine dropping an object from a raised position. As an object's altitude above the Earth's surface increases, its gravitational potential energy also increases. The potential energy stored due to its position is now being converted to kinetic energy. We also observe this with elastic potential energy.
Okay, new term. Elastic potential energy occurs when objects are compressed and stretched, or generally deformed in any manner, creating potential energy. Think of this bungee or a spring. Okay, Joe, what's next?
We pull back on the band and create potential energy. When we release the potential energy, it is converted to kinetic energy. Here on the International Space Station, we are still under the influence of gravity, primarily due to our position with the Earth. So when I have this ball on this ramp, normally back on Earth, I release the ball and it rolls down the ramp due to a change in its potential energy that's being transferred to kinetic energy. But as you can see, it doesn't happen here. So it doesn't mean we don't have potential energy. It just means we're not converting it at this time to kinetic energy. And why is that? Gravity is pulling us down, but we're moving super fast. And so what it is we're bending around the Earth in this perpetual falling motion. Thanks for joining me on board the International Space Station. We're sending it back to Earth so you can try your own experiment. See you next time.
Alrighty. So all this talk about energy. Where do you get the energy from to run these things in your house? Your house pulls a lot of quote unquote energy. So where does it come from? Yes, you guessed it. We spoke about it in class. Hydro-Quebec is the one that provides you with electrical energy to run the objects that you have in your house, to give you lights, to just make your house function. So if you go to page 402 in your textbook, there's discussion of hydroelectricity. And in this discussion, you see this idea of energy transformation. You don't end up with electrical energy right away. There's some stuff happening. So on page 402, what's happening? We are looking at the production of hydroelectricity. So hydroelectricity should make you think of water and electricity. So in Quebec, we get our energy from Hydro-Quebec in the form of hydroelectricity because we are surrounded by water. We have an abundance of water. So we have that natural resource, which makes it easy for us to always have this source of energy, right? So this hydro energy is so important to us. So let's take a look at what's happening over here in this image, which is found on page 402 of your textbook. So water from streams and rivers can be held back by a dam. So what do you know what a dam is? So if I put a dam up, what is it doing? So it is stopping the water from flowing. Okay. So the water can flow, and the water does have the capacity to move, right? But it's being stopped by the dam. So it actually has potential energy at that point. Okay, so during this time, the dam is storing potential energy. When the water is released, so the dam is moved, right? Or so it's moved, sorry, and allows the water to flow. When the water is released, it discharges kinetic energy. So, why is it called kinetic energy at this point? Because there's movement involved, there's motion. The movement of the water drives the turbines. Okay, so watch over here. Here's movement, and this is the turbines. So now that the turbines have started moving, what is that now? That is kinetic energy as well. So the movement of the water drives turbines that produce electricity. So here's the electrical energy. This electricity is transmitted to homes and factories. So that's over here. Energy transformations occur when sorry, let me just move this. Sorry, energy transformations occur when hydroelectricity is produced. The hydroelectric plant converts the kinetic energy of water into electrical energy. Right? So we see an energy conversion. Let's just watch a quick video.
People have been capturing the energy and moving water for thousands of years. And today, it's still a powerful resource that can generate clean, renewable, and affordable electricity. You see, we harness energy from flowing water and convert it to electricity. That's what we call hydroelectric power, or hydropower. Water flows from a higher elevation to a lower elevation, and a hydropower facility uses turbines and generators to convert this motion into electricity. America has been using hydropower to generate electricity for more than 100 years now. And today, about 7% of all our electricity is generated from hydropower, making it the largest source of renewable power. So, what makes hydropower renewable? It's simple. Water. Water evaporates into clouds and recycles back to Earth as precipitation. The water cycle is constantly recharging and can be used to produce electricity along the way. How does it work? Basically, there are several ways hydropower technologies can generate electricity. You may recognize dams, like this one. This technology is called an impoundment. The impoundment stores water in a reservoir. When the water is released, it flows through and spins a turbine, turning a generator that produces electricity. Here's another technology. This is a diversion. It channels a portion of a river through a canal or pipe into a turbine and generator system. What's cool about this method is that it uses the natural flow of the river and usually doesn't require a large dam. And have a look at this. This is called pumped storage hydropower. Basically, it works like a huge battery. To charge the battery, water is pumped back up into a reservoir during periods of low energy use, often during the night when people are using fewer appliances. Then, when people need more power during the day, the water can be released to produce electricity. As long as we've been capturing energy from water, you may think there's nothing new in hydropower technology. Think again. The Department of Energy is helping to upgrade older facilities by increasing the efficiency of the turbines and generators. Operators of neighboring hydropower facilities are also working together to optimize energy production across whole river systems instead of each dam working alone. And we can add generators or retrofit dams that were built without power, like dams used to water crops or prevent floods. Today, there are about 80,000 dams in the US, but less than 3% of these dams produce power. That means there's a big opportunity to generate more clean, renewable power at dams we've already built.
New technology is also making hydropower even more environmentally friendly. For example, researchers are reducing adverse impacts on fish with fish friendly turbines. And fish ladders, like these, let them swim around dams. Hydropower is an essential, reliable, and renewable source of clean energy with a rich history. And it's meeting substantial energy demands today. With new technologies, it will be even more efficient and have greater production capacity, powering U.S. homes and businesses for centuries to come.
All right, so in that video, there was talk about this word efficiency. So, this is something that is very important, talking about efficient versus inefficient energy transformation. So, the reality of it is, in order for something to be efficient, the energy that we input should be almost fully converted to the energy that we want to use. Okay, so over here we see input of energy and then useful output of energy. Look how small that is. And then there's wasted output energy. So if I want to actually input some energy and make something move, and it generates a lot of heat, then some of that energy that I've inputted has been lost to heat. So that's not efficient because all of the energy that I put in is not being converted to useful energy. It is not being converted and used as I would like it to be used. It's being lost in the form of heat, possibly. And no, it's not being destroyed, but it's being lost in the universe. So, when energy changes from one form to another, it's never entirely transformed. To determine the efficiency of an energy system, we calculate the percentage of energy that is actually transformed into the desired form. If a system manages to transform most of the energy, we say that it is energy efficient. If a system does not transform most of the energy into useful form, we say that it is energy inefficient. The energy that is not transformed into the desired useful form is said to be lost. So here is the formula. Energy efficiency is equal to the useful output energy divided by the total input energy. So if I put in 200 joules of energy and I get out 200 joules of energy, that would be 100% efficiency. That would mean everything that I put in was converted into the desired form of energy and it was useful. That is highly unlikely. There is always some loss, but the closer you are to 100%, the more efficient your technical object is operating. So we talk about energy inefficiency and energy efficiency. When we talk about our homes, Hydro-Quebec is always sending these notices, how efficient is your home? So over here, we see an energy inefficient house because we are losing energy over here. So the heat is being lost, right? So I want to heat my house, all right? I want to stay warm, but it's being lost because maybe my house is not insulated well. And then also cold air from outside is coming in my house. So what's going to happen? I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, it's cold. So I'm going to turn up the heat, right? Because I want that thermal energy. But what's happening? The thermal energy is leaving the house. And then cold air is coming in. So I turn up the heat even more. So I am wasting energy, wasting money because I keep on turning up the heat, which is electricity, and hydro's charging me for that. If I have an energy efficient home and things are well insulated and nothing is able to leave and nothing is able to come in, I can keep my temperature of my house at a certain level and I will not lose the heat. So I won't constantly be turning it up or keeping it on to compensate for cold air coming in because look, the cold air is not coming in. So there are a lot of appliances that will have this label, Energy Star, which tells you if your appliances are energy efficient, meaning the energy that is being put in is being converted and used as it should be and not being lost. I remember having a dryer that was not an Energy Star dryer, and the purpose of it is to dry, yes, but the outside should not be hot, but it was very hot. So I was losing a lot of the energy in the form of thermal energy. Then I got an energy efficient dryer and it remained cool as it dried. So a lot of the energy that was being put in was being put to use as it should be and it wasn't being lost. So it was more efficient. So our government actually has different websites that discusses energy efficiency and which appliances because the whole idea is if we have energy efficient appliances, then we will be using less hydro, and that means we'll be using less water and there'll be less strain on the environment. So the idea is that we want to have energy efficient appliances. So let's just take a look at this government website. So energy efficiency. So this is an official government website and they're talking about energy efficiency. Innovation in the fields of housing, building communities, industry, and transportation can take advantage of the benefits of energy efficiency, such as lower energy costs, cutting emissions, improving operating performance, and increasing assets values. So you can take a look on this page, and all of these are clickable links. And you had asked about LED lighting. So, LED lighting is one of those energy efficient things. Okay, so we see here that we have an LED bulb. It is 11 watts. Okay, so 11 watts, that means how much power it has, right? And the life is equal to 25,000 hours per bulb, 22.8 years per bulb. That is amazing. Okay. This bulb, one of these bulbs, right, an LED bulb, is the equivalent of 25 incandescent bulbs. Incandescent light bulbs are those regular light bulbs that you have. And remember, we talked about this in class. The regular light bulbs are not energy efficient because have you ever left a light bulb on, one of these ones, and touched it after? It is extremely hot. So, what did I want? I wanted radiant energy. So, the energy that I input, so the chemical or the electrical energy that I have that I wanted to transform into radiant energy, when it is in this form of light bulb, I lose a lot of the energy that I input in the form of heat. So the idea of having a light bulb is not to heat things for the most part, right? We want the light bulb because we want the radiant or the light energy. We want it to light up things, not to heat up things. So if there is presence of a lot of heat, that means we are losing energy and not all of the energy is being converted to useful energy. So the idea is look at this 11 watts is a lot lower of power than 60 watts. So that means that we have less energy consumption with the LED light bulb. So this website too talks all about LED lighting and talks about the fact that it's an Energy Star approved device. Okay, so it reduces energy consumption and it's just more efficient. It's better for the environment. It is cheaper. In the long run, it might cost more for one of these bulbs, but in the long run, you won't have to replace it that much. So it's an investment. So this is a very cool picture to look at. It shows you all the different light bulbs All right, and it shows you how much wasted energy you have in each light bulb. And you see over here that the LED light bulb, which is light emitting diode, has the least amount of wasted energy. So, because it has the least amount of wasted energy, that means that it's more energy efficient. So over here, it says, take a look at the statistics. The US Department of Energy estimates that widespread adoption of LED lighting by 2025 will reduce electricity demands from lighting by 62%, eliminate 258 million metric tons of carbon emissions. That is big for the environment. That is so great for the environment. Reduce the amount of materials being put into landfills, avoid the building of 133 new power plants, and it would save the US over $280 billion. Yes, we're talking about the US, but we can imagine that it's comparable for Canada. So the bottom line is using LED as opposed to the traditional incandescent hot light bulbs is better for the environment and it's better for your pocket. So I encourage you to read pages 398 to 403. And if you have not read the other pages with the introduction to the energy, I am telling you to go read that now. So that's 395. So essentially by now, at the end of this, you should have read pages 395 to page 403. And again, as always, thank you for listening. And if you have any other questions, please email me at hinksons@loyola.ca. And that's it. Thank you. I know this one was kind of long, but I hope that you know a little bit more about energy transformations now than you did before you started this lecture. So take care and have a great day.